Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Pull Ups by Hosco. Yes, you are at the right place. If you are just coming in to the session, we're getting ready, we're warming up to get this workout started. So we'll just wait a few more minutes to make sure we're having our time to welcome everybody onto the session. My name is Amanda, and I'm going to be your coach for today. I'm so excited to be here for this workout. Welcome, welcome, everybody joining us. Great. Fantastic. I think everybody's here now, so let's get started. Let's jump right into this first episode of Pull Ups by Hosco. So, as I mentioned, my name is Amanda, and I work here at Hosco in School Relations, and I'm going to be one of your coaches for today. I am also joined by Marina Kawarazaki from the Dorchester Collection. She's the People Development Specialist, and she's going to be our guest coach for today. So, Marina, if you just want to say a quick hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for Hosco for hosting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So, as I mentioned, we are about to start a workout because, yes, this is a workout. Getting ready to enter the world of work and start your career can be super challenging. And there's so many things and steps that you have to go through to get ready. Looking for the job, getting your CV ready, applying, interviews. It's like, woof, I'm tired just thinking about it. So, just like a workout, you have to put the work in if you want to see the results. That's why Hosco is here, and we're going to be like your personal gym throughout the series of episodes that we're going to have of Pull Ups by Hosco. Today is only the first episode of many to come, and essentially our role is to help you through each step of the way to make sure that, when you're about to start your career, you are going to be prepared and be fully ready to go. And today we're going to be focusing on CV creation. So basically, how do you get your CV ready when you still don't have that much work experience, right? So, as I mentioned, Hosco is here to help you fully in every step of the way. We are a community that is worldwide, and we're here to support people in hospitality across all over the world in terms of the industry side of things, so hotels and restaurants and everything related to hospitality on that side, but also students and young professionals like yourselves that are joining us today. So you can definitely count on us to support you throughout all of this. And basically, just to tell you a little bit more about Hosco, is that this is also the place where you come for lots of different things. So it's a place for you to find your new job or your first job potentially. It is also the place for you to get advice and tips and just grow as a professional and a future professional. So you can definitely find a lot of insights in our advice section on our social media. And it's also a place to network and for you to connect with other colleagues, others classmates, companies, and other schools like the one that you're probably part of. So definitely a lot to do on the platform itself. And now, without much further ado, I would love to hear a little bit more about you, Marina. And thank you so much for, like I said, for being our guest coach today. If you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us about your career this far, and how you got to be at the Dorchester Collection as as the role that you're doing now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, I'm so excited to be here with you all. So as Amanda mentioned, I'm the People Development Specialist here at Dorchester Collection. So my role is to look after recruitment for our corporate office, but also the strategy for our 9 hotels at Dorchester Collection, and also to build relationships with students and hospitality professionals like yourselves. So I was in your shoes not too long ago. I was actually one of those people who didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. I didn't have many connections. I hadn't done any internships by my 3rd year of university. So I got to a stage where I was like, I really need to start branching out and getting more involved. So I did do that. So in terms of my career, I started as an intern at the Times Square Hilton Garden Inn in New York City, which was a really exciting opportunity for me and door into hospitality, and I just fell in love with it. After that, I moved to the Carlisle in New York, Rosewood Hotel in HR as well, and then I came over here to London to work at Dorchester Collection, and I actually got this job, the people, or my previous job within Dorchester Collection through Hosco. So I saw the role on Hosco. I thought it looked really exciting, and it's a great story. We've come full circle, and I'm here with you today. So I've been with the company for about 3 years now, and now in a different role in recruitment. So I think throughout my career, each relationship, experience, and conversation I had about my career was valuable in some sense. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're crafting your CV today. So with that, I'm really excited to be talking about your CVs and speaking with you and bulking up the CVs and doing this workout together.
That's great to hear that you have been in the student's shoes not too long ago, and that Hosco was part of your journey for starting your career. That's always nice to hear success stories like that. So we're really pleased with that. So as we mentioned, every session we're going to have a different coach join us, and Marina today is our guest coach, and essentially the beauty of having this, of having somebody come directly from the industry who is actually the person that is looking at those CVs as they come through, that is part of the recruitment process. It's really valuable, and we're really excited to share the insights that we have, and the tips and the advice that Marina can share with us, because this is coming directly from somebody that would potentially be reviewing your CV and your application for your first internship or job. So as Marina mentioned, the CV, the art of crafting a CV is something that definitely takes a lot of work, and you have to review and look into the different aspects of it. So we wanted to be able to deliver to you guys as much of information as possible when it comes to how to build your CV. And so we decided to go out and ask people like Marina, recruitment managers and people that are working in the industry, what they think are the best tips and advice in terms of how to structure your CV, what information to add, how to present that information. And we sent this survey out. We asked all of these questions, and that's exactly what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at those answers together. We're going to give you a little bit more advice on how to get your CV in shape and yourself in shape as well. But before we jump into that, I actually have a question for you guys. So we're going to put up a poll now, which is, on average, how long do you think a recruiter spends looking at a CV at the first look before considering it or discarding it for the next phase of the process? What do you guys think? The poll. Okay, great. Great. Thank you guys so much for the answers. We'll have a look at the results later. So like I said, let's jump in now to looking at what were these questions? What is the advice? So for our first question, we had, on average, how long do you think it takes to review a CV before they discard it? And we can see here that 40.4% of our respondents said that between 15 and 30 seconds. So time is of the essence here. Closely followed by 29.8% that said 30 seconds to a minute. So really not that much time. Marina, why is it? Why is it that it's so important to make that good first impression, and because there's so little time?
So I definitely agree with the survey results on this one. As a recruiter, I wouldn't spend more than 30 seconds on an applicant, given the number of applications that we have for each vacancy that we have. So if you think about it, if I spend 30 seconds on an applicant and I have 100 applications, that's already 5 hours out of my day for one job. And HR managers usually have multiple roles open. The interviews take time as well. Meeting with managers and planning the recruitment process, going to recruitment fairs, and so much more. So I think, like you said, time is of the essence, and the first impression is everything. I think, it might come up in questions, so I wanted to mention some companies will use tools as part of their screening process, whether it's a situational judgment test, a personality profiling, AI. Some bigger companies use AI as part of their recruitment selection tools. So these tools can come either before or after the recruit or the interview process. So it really depends between company and company.
A lot of reasons why the time is important here. It's related to the volume of applications that there will be, and also the fact that you could be using different systems that are going to
Mhm.
be tracking things. So key first takeaway is for us to make sure that our CV is going to be to the point and clear, because at first glance, that's your first opportunity to make a good impression, and it's important to reach that very quickly. So that's really great to know, and also nice to see that you're pretty much aligned with what this
Yeah.
the results were. So the next question we wanted to know was, so you're about to start building the CV, and we know that a CV has all of these different sections, and we were wondering, what are the sections that are most important in terms of the time that you would spend reviewing them? So when a recruiter gets a CV, where is their focus? Where are they going to dedicate most of this time? This very little time that they have at a first stage, but definitely something that they will look at a bit more. So the top answer was work and volunteer experience, followed then by education coming in at number 2, and number 3 was skills, and followed then by fourth, the about me personal statement, fifth, the contact information, and sixth, the extracurricular activities. So definitely something. What are your first impressions, Marina, when you saw these results? Do you agree with this? Is there anything that caught your attention in terms of it being maybe something that you would have done differently, or why is it that this is this in this order?
So I thought this one was really interesting. I personally would have put extracurriculars much higher on this list, and I'll explain why. So for those just starting their careers, I think it's important to know that you're not going to have everything figured out. But as a new grad, I think it would be valuable to include any role that you've done that's created value or served others, whether it's a freelance project, a side hustle, maybe a lockdown passion project that you've done. But the most important thing for us is that you need to fill the gaps, because we won't understand what value that you brought to other people unless you explain it in your CV. So, for example, let's say that you led a student trip. That is great, but you need to tell us that that helped you manage your time, manage a large group of people, manage a budget perhaps. And then in doing so, and in explaining to us why that experience was valuable, it's not just going to help you shape your CV, but it's also going to help you stand out from other candidates when applying to jobs. And then in terms of the other aspects, I definitely would have agreed that work and volunteer experience comes first. Education is important, but I think you should list some courses that you've done so we can understand where your interests are and what kind of courses that you've been doing that could help you towards the role. And then skills definitely important. And then I would put contact information last.
Very interesting takeaways from that from this particular question. So extracurricular activities, so long as they're relevant, it sounds like
Exactly.
are important to mention, and a description of it. Always, kind of do a self review, maybe in terms of seeing, will this add value to the application and to the
Mhm.
CV. I also think it was really nice that you mentioned the education about the filling in the gaps. So to go a little bit deeper into adding more information around the courses or something else that you did. I think filling in the gaps is definitely a nice takeaway from this question, and to always go a little bit deeper whenever possible.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Let's see what we have for the next question. So in terms of how you would describe all of these different elements that we do have on the CV, so the experience and the skills, what's the best way to present it visually? And this is something that is quite key, exactly because of what we saw in the first question, right? There is such little time, so descriptive bullet points was actually the first, the top rated answer that we had here, then followed by only keywords and descriptive paragraph and number 3, and give examples, tell a story as number 4. So I'm surprised, Marina, why is it that you think that descriptive bullet points were the top answer and perhaps maybe not keywords? I mean, initially I was thinking, since keywords, we have such little time and you have to go straight to the point, I thought perhaps keywords would be rated higher. What's your take on this sense of presenting things?
So I think with bullet points, it allows the recruiter to fully understand what was done and what the person achieved in what was done. So for key points, it might really be hard for us to understand that. So let's say if you just use keywords and said event organizing. So that's great. That gives me a little bit of insight in what you've done, but it would be much more beneficial for me to hear organized annual Christmas concert for 5,000 attendees with a team of 50. Because with that, I would understand you were able to manage a team, you were able to work with large scale events, you were able to work with vendors perhaps, and I wouldn't have been able to discern that with just event organizing. So I think with the bullet points, it gives us a little bit more information.
Great, great. So finding that balance with the bullet points is key. So giving a little bit more information, but not
Mhm.
too much. That's excellent. Also, guys, I just wanted to remind everybody we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So don't be shy. If we're not answering, or if there's something you would like to know a little bit more about, just write us in the chat, and we'll get back to you at the end when we have the session. Let's see, what do we have for our next question? So the next one is about the personal statement, which is a big piece of the CV. And I think it's something that it can be a bit daunting, right? When you have to write about yourself and in such a short, few lines and a few sentences, like what do I say about myself and what is more important? So for this one, we asked, we asked the survey respondents, and for the English speaking survey that we sent out, we got that the number one thing would be to state your general strengths, and then second would be your future ambitions, and third, the value to the team, which was interesting because what we did is that we also asked in our French speaking survey, and we got some different answers. Basically, the order was switched up a bit. So we had the value to the team coming in at number 1, then the general strengths, and then the future ambitions. So Marina, I'm very curious to know what is your take on this one, because it's the only question that we saw some difference between the languages. Do you have any insights as to maybe even why that could be, or really what's just your opinion on what is the best focus for the personal statement?
Yeah, so I actually align more with the French survey results on this one. I think value to a team and general strengths are the main things that we look out for. So I would actually put them equal to each other and then the future ambitions, because as someone looking to fill a role, I want to understand what that person can bring and what their strengths are to the role, because that will help me understand, are they fit for the job? And we at Dorchester Collection, and I think a lot of employers love to shape the careers of the employees, but equally future ambitions and can be saved for the interview process. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And, that's always changing as well. So I don't think it's too relevant to put in the personal statement when, it needs to be brief and to the point. But definitely happy to talk about it in the interview process.
And I think it gives us a reminder that this is definitely a process that has many different stages, and that there's different information that we can focus on depending on which stage you're at. So it sounds like what you're saying, Marina, is that for the CV stage, where it's the beginning, let's focus on the value to the team and your general
Mhm.
strengths, because hopefully there will be more opportunities to talk about the future ambitions. So the takeaway here is save the future ambitions maybe for a later stage, where you can tell a little bit more about yourself and where you want to be in the future, and let's focus on more of the team and the general strengths for the personal statement on the CV itself. Do you have any other advice that you would give for the personal statement and writing it just in more general terms that could actually help them in the writing process, like maybe peer reviewing or anything, any other tips?
Yeah, I think with the personal statement, I'd like to see some personalization to either the company or the job because sometimes it's like I'm an ambitious person, which is great, but how is that relevant to the role that you're applying to? I think connecting the two by looking at the job description is really important, and then that way it's just a snapshot. It's like a mini cover letter that allows me to see, okay, this person has those skills that are relevant to the job that they're applying to.
Okay, great. That's a really interesting mention of the importance of aligning your CV, your personal statement, and even the cover letter, which is another element, to
Mhm.
the job itself, right? Whenever you're applying for a specific role. Let's see, what do we have for our next question? So, how long should a CV be when someone doesn't have that much experience, is just starting off their career? Uh, do we stick to 1 page, 2 page maximum, no length limit? And we can see here that the vast majority, 72.3%, said stick to 1 page. Marina, do you agree with this when it comes to the a CV with little or no work experience? And also, what would be your take on just a CV in general, even if somebody has more experience and has more to share, let's say, in their time working?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question, and I agree with the 72.3% of the people. Like we saw before, we only have about 30 seconds to be looking at the CV, so 1 page is enough to kind of give me a snapshot into the candidate. So, I always say if you have less than 10 years experience, 1 page is enough because you wanna list just the relevant experience for the role. So whether you've had a long career or a short career, you just want to do the main parts of your career. So it's like the CV is the cover of the book that you want to read, and then the interview process is getting to learn the story of the person. So you just want to draw the person in, be invited to the interview, and then we can discuss more about yourself because you're not going to have everything be able to fit on the CV. So we just need to capture the attention of the person that is reading it.
The CV is the cover of the book you want to read. I love that quote. That's just great, and I think that's a really good mindset for us to put ourselves in when we're starting to create a CV. It should be, it should draw the recruiter in. It should make you want to read that book and get to know that full story. So I think that's a really nice way to put it, and
Mhm.
definitely some really good advice. And the other takeaway that we have here: so if you have less than 10 years of work experience, which I imagine all of you are in that position now, definitely no reason to go beyond 1 page. So let's stick to having 1 page on this V. And how do you feel about colors? And should we stick to black and white? Should it be colorful? Is there any other design tips or preferences that you have?
So I personally don't. I love to see a little bit of color, but it really depends on the recruiter. So some people are like, I like the classic. So personally, my CV just has black and white, but I often see really creative CVs and I am drawn by them and I really do like it. And I can see that the person has taken some time to craft their CV. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in that case. As long as the main elements are there, I wouldn't go too wild because it is a professional document, but I think a little bit of color is absolutely fine.
Okay, a little bit of color. That's a nice way to put it too. And do you think that there's anything with the look and feel of the CV that is more specific to the hospitality industry? So we know that you're working at Dorchester Collection, a global leader in hospitality, and there's a lot of perhaps there's some common threads that we can see when applying for hospitality roles. Is there anything that you would say that's more hospitality specific when thinking about a CV?
Um, I think more so than industry, I would say it relates to the role. So I do see a little bit more color and pizzazz for creative roles, whether they're in the hospitality industry or not. And maybe a little bit more plain and straightforward for other types of roles. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention is I think differences between countries. So people in the US do their CVs or resumes a little bit different from people in Europe. I think for me as a recruiter, something that's really important is checking the CV for grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, even formatting, because sometimes I'll see a CV and I know that that person has good experience, but I'm a little bit disappointed by the CV because maybe it's not formatted as well. So I think just double checking, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just give it another look through and maybe have a peer review like we mentioned before. And that way, you know, it's ready to go to apply for the job that you really want.
Differences depending on where in the world the CV is, and also another thing to keep in mind, it's more related to the role and maybe not just hospitality in general. That's great. Thank you for sharing those insights as well. Oops. So another question that we had, and this was a big one on our minds, was social media, right? So social media is part of our life in so many aspects, basically part of everything we do today. And we were wondering what to do when it comes to our professional persona and our CV in particular. Is it relevant to have social media, have our social media accounts mentioned on a CV? And so we can see that the respondents of the survey, they said 53.2% said no. So the majority said no, but it wasn't by a huge margin. So there's a bit of a split here. So we had 46.8 that said yes. And what is your opinion on this one, Marina? What should a young professional, somebody just starting off their first CV, do when it comes to their social media?
Yeah, so this is a good one, and I can see why it's such a close call between no and yes. I think social media is such a big part of our lives, but I think it really depends on the role that we're thinking about. Some companies and some roles really require you to put your social media on there, a social media manager perhaps. But I think it also posting your personal social media on your CV also opens doors to bias. So just keeping in mind, we don't want recruiters to be making a decision based on your personal photos, right? We want them to be making decisions based on your professional experience. So I think keeping in mind the type of social media you're posting. So I'm personally a really big fan of LinkedIn and Hosco because those are professional, to me, professional social media channels where a lot of what you post on those channels should already be on your CV anyway. So I think it's okay to post, and then it's okay for a recruiter to look at it, to look at your interactions on it, and your what you have listed on your profile itself. And then if you do want to post something about Instagram, just making sure it's relevant. So, for example, I mentioned before, like posting about a or sharing a passion project that you did in lockdown. Let's say you started baking a lot in lockdown and you've created an Instagram account and you want to apply for a pastry roll at the Dorchester. Like that would be really relevant and really exciting for a hiring manager to see, but not so much like your personal life and unless it's relevant to the role.
And
Yeah.
I was going to ask you exactly that. If you considered some networks like LinkedIn and Hosco to be social media as well. So it sounds like
Yeah.
yes.
I
And
definitely think it is because it's a network that you're connecting with other hospitality professionals or professionals in any industry. So I would definitely consider it social media.
okay, very interesting. So social media that's relevant to the professional world sounds like it's a go.
Yeah.
And of course, other things if they are relevant to the particular role that you're going to be working in.
Mhm.
Great. So this was our last question when it comes to the survey that we did to find out what the industry had to say about how to build the perfect CV if you have little or no formal work experience. So what we did now is that we basically gathered all of this information and we've built a CV. We built an example CV that takes into account all of the feedback that we got, and we're going to have a look at it now. Here we have Sophie Hosco and her lovely CV. So as we mentioned, we've done the descriptive bullet points, for example. We've placed the professional experience at the top of the CV so that that is focusing on the area that's most important and where they will spend more time. Then followed by education and volunteer experience, and then education. And on the other side, we have contact and the languages and the skills. So we took all of that, we've presented it here. We decided to go with some color, but we didn't do too much color either. But Marina, what I would love to hear from you now, and the reason why we're asking Marina here to know her opinion is that it's always important to remember that when we are applying for a position and preparing our CV, of course, we can take into consideration all of these, the tips and the information, but there's also always a person behind that, and there's a recruiter that is going to also have, you know, their preferences and what they have to say. So it's always good to hear directly from someone what their opinion is when looking at the CV. So Marina, if you were to get Sophie Hosco's CV, what would be your first impressions? What do you think, yeah, she could change to maybe make it a bit more clear, or what would be your take on this example CV? And we will be sharing the CV with you guys afterwards in case you can't see it too well on the screen now, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, so overall, I think it's a well presented CV. I would definitely be drawn in and consider Sophie Hosco for a role. So off the bat, I would make a couple of edits to her CV. So as you can see, she has quite brief bullet points that doesn't really tell me a lot about what she's done and what she's achieved in the role. So for example, in the front office intern role, as a recruiter within hospitality, I have a general idea of what a front office intern in a hotel would do. So checking guests in and all of that. But I would like to have seen her say checking guests into the hotel using Opera, because that tells me what systems she has used in the past. So maybe if we use the same system, it's a great match. Or something like sped up the check-in process by creating a checklist. That shows initiative that she took. She saw something wasn't working and she took it upon herself to create something new to kind of create the process. So we love that kind of creativity within Dorchester Collection. So that would have been a good addition to her list. Or anything else that she achieved, like she was Employee of the Month, or maybe she received guest feedback. That would be interesting for me because that doesn't show me the job description. It shows me more about what she did and what she achieved in the role. What else? So I think her photo, this again depends on regions. I would personally advise against putting a photo in your CV. And the reason for that, again, similar to the social media, is you don't want recruiters making judgments based on your appearance, right? You want recruiters to be making judgments based on your professional experience. So it's always good to kind of leave that out because, if it doesn't matter to the role, then we shouldn't really put it in the CV. Let me think. So her skills section, I think, is pretty good, but a little bit vague. So
Okay.
I think she has sales and marketing on there. So as someone who I can't see she's done maybe a sales marketing role in the past, to me, when I see that, I'm a bit confused on what she means by she has sales and marketing skills. So how she could change that is she could maybe put a certification that she's done in the past. So maybe like she's done a course on digital marketing through Google or something like that. That would be interesting to see. I think more tangible aspects of the skills, because that would be more interesting for me as a recruiter. And I would understand where she got those skills and how she can use them for her role. And then just this is my own nitpicking, but any past roles should be written in past tense. So instead of organizing events, organized, an event for 50 people, because I know that she's done it in the past. But otherwise, I think the CV is pretty good. I think my main advice that I always like to give, and I received this advice before and I use it. I mean, I am not looking for new jobs right now, but when I used this advice. So any role that you're applying to, you should be tailoring your application and your CV based on that job. So if she were applying to a reservations role, for example, thinking about the reservations role, looking really closely at the job description and seeing how your skills can be tailored towards that role. So I'm sure that Sophie Hosco has had a lot of experience with guests as a front office intern. So really building up on that and tailoring it to the role, because as a recruiter, I'm seeing a lot of CVs for the same role. And in my head, I have, okay, I'm looking for these skills, and these skills. And Like I mentioned, we only have a few seconds to make that decision. So being able to have a clear picture of this CV is fit for this role is really helpful for us.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. That's all really good and really specific advice that I think we'll definitely take that into consideration. So some of the takeaways here is definitely to, on the skill section, to give a little bit more, right? So to mention perhaps a specific certification rather than just sticking to the more vague part. I think it was also really interesting that you focused and mentioned a little bit more about adapting your CV to the role. That's definitely a really good piece of advice for us as well. So thank you so much for all of those. So essentially what we're going to do is that we're going to take all of this extra advice that Marina gave to us, and we're going to readjust. We're going to review Sophie Hosco's CV, and we'll also be sharing that with those of you that are here today to see the difference between these two. And then again, you can also, add your own personality to the CV, obviously, but we wanted you to have an example to guide you as you go on with this process, so that we will be there to answer any other questions that you have around the CV as well. Excellent. So now we have the poll answers from the first question that we asked, which was around how long you spend on the CV, which I'm really curious to see what you guys thought, because those 15 to 30 seconds were very, very, very short. So let's see if we have the answers coming up on the poll. Marina, I know that you mentioned that you agreed with the poll, but were you surprised at all?
To be honest, no, I wasn't surprised. I was actually surprised that a lot of people said more than a minute. I think, again, it depends on the number of applications you get and the role that you're recruiting for, and the candidates too, because some people do have multiple page CVs, so you can't just have a quick glance at it. You might have to take some time to look through that person's specifications. So, yeah, not too surprised, to be honest.
Okay, great. So it was definitely straight to the point on that one. I think we might be having some technical difficulties on the poll, so let's see if hopefully we can.
I can see it. So should I read out the results?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. So we asked, on average, how long do you think recruiters take to review a CV? So 10 people, 40% of people, said less than 15 seconds. 16% of people said 15 to 30 seconds.
Okay.
28% of people said 30 seconds to a minute. And 16% of people said more than a minute. So most people said less than 15 seconds.
Okay, pretty on point. So you guys were pretty aware of the importance of going straight to the point, and that there really isn't that much time. So really, really interesting. Okay, nice. Good to know. So for the next question that we asked, this is actually not focused on the CV themselves, but we did want to know from all of these people in the industry, all of these recruitment managers, what the impact of, we know that the world is changing, has changed drastically. We just, we've been through this worldwide pandemic that had massive implications in the hospitality industry and the recruitment in hospitality. And we were curious to know what is their take on when do they expect to reach the pre-pandemic, so what life was like before normal, in terms of internship hires, right? So when will we go back to those normal numbers? And we were really excited to see that the most popular answer at 40.4% was that by Q1 2022, so in a few months, we are going to be seeing those levels again. So that's definitely some really great news, followed by Q3 at 19.1%. And so definitely nice to see that things are looking up, and that we're starting to see those numbers go back up to normal, especially when it comes to internships, because we know you guys are all very eager to start that Marina, what is the situation like at the Dorchester Collection now in terms of things going back to pre-pandemic levels and essentially what are the opportunities available now? Tell us a little bit more about what you have going on.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I just want to say these results make me really happy because I love the hospitality industry, and it was really unfortunate how badly that we were affected as an industry because of the pandemic. So it's really encouraging to see all these respondents said that we're going to go back to normal in Q1 2022, because we always talk about reigniting the spark for hospitality following, the pandemic. So really, really excited to see that my colleagues in the industry answered the same. So here at Dorchester Collection, I also answered Q1 2022 because we do have internships available across the collection. So, of course, the reopenings of the hotels and the opportunities differ from region to region. So right now, I know we have a lot of opportunities in our Parisian hotels as well as our UK hotels, and then Italy's following suit as well, and the US. And we also have some exciting new internships in our reservations department at the corporate office, which we've never had before. So there are a lot of opportunities. So definitely have a look at our careers website because we take all of our applications through there.
It's great to hear that the levels are going back up and that you have so many opportunities available. Definitely check out the Dorchester Collection page on Hosco as well, because those opportunities will all be available there. It's as easy as just typing Dorchester Collection and Hosco into your search engine, Google. If you want to go straight there, you'll be taken directly to the Dorchester Collection page on Hosco, and so definitely stay tuned for those applications and make sure you get your CVs in tip-top condition before applying to any of those. So here you have this QR code that will take you directly to create your Hosco profile in case you don't have one. So we definitely encourage you guys to do that. But before we wrap things up, let's definitely look at the Q&A to see what questions you had. So let's see. The first question we had from Vincent Tinard. Would you say that cover letters are still important? It seems that recruiters don't read it anymore. Marina, what do you think about that question? Cover letters.
I think it depends. I think focus on the summary that we talked about on the CV, because yes, I would say a lot of recruiters don't read cover letters. Definitely, if the application requires it, then I think work hard on it because you know that they're reading it if it's a requirement. If it's optional, I would not spend too much time on it personally.
Okay, great. So the personal statement, as you mentioned, you called it before the mini cover letter.
Yeah.
Even that's a nice way to put it. So
and sorry to interrupt, but I just want to ensure if sometimes when you're applying to internships, you do need a written portion, maybe like an essay or a personal statement. So definitely focus on that if it's part of the application process.
Okay, excellent. The next question we have is about work experience. So we saw that this is the most important part, but the question is, should I include all of my work experience or only the relevant ones for the position I'm applying?
So I think it really depends. In this case, I would say tailor each experience to the opportunity that you're applying to. So if you don't have that much experience, I think any experience is valuable in some way. You've learned something, even if you were maybe like, doing a volunteer activity or anything like that, or something that you might think is not relevant to the role. Think about the skills that you've learned from it, whether it's people skills, whether it's time management skills. Those are skills that you learn in a lot of different roles. So I think when you've gotten to a stage where your CV is leaking into multiple pages, then I think you can think about which of the roles are relevant and pick the most recent or the most relevant. But in a case where you might not have that much experience, then think about the skills that you've learned and put it all on there.
Definitely include the experience, but tailor it a bit more. Excellent. So we have another question here, which is around videos. This is actually a question that is, what do you think about having a short 1-minute video rather than a conventional Word or PDF resume?
It's a great question. I love that idea because it shows creativity, it shows ownership. I think it's a great idea. I think it might be a little bit tricky in terms of execution. So, what I mean is, a lot of companies will use talent systems that might not accept that format when you're uploading. You know, when you go into an application and it says upload your CV, it might only allow you to do PDF or Word format. So that's where it might get a little bit tricky. But in terms of the idea, I love it. And I think more companies should be open to different forms of CVs because that's a really creative and great idea.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anand Shukla, for that very interesting question.
Yeah,
And yeah, or maybe it's something that can be considered for later on in the process as well. Like as you mentioned, there can be this barrier, no, of the technology of what you can or cannot upload.
exactly.
But that's really interesting. So we have a question actually about references. So on Sophie's CV, we didn't have any references, and we didn't talk about that. Um, do you think that references on a CV at this stage is something that is not that important?
Yeah, so in terms of referencing, I think that is something that comes at a later stage. So you've passed the application process, you've maybe had an interview, and then we check references for people. So, especially in the UK, we legally don't ask for references for people because we only ask information like, did they work in that company? What were the dates that they worked? So, factual referencing, because that allows that limits bias again, because the person that we're asking for the reference might not know the role very well. They might not have had a good relationship with the person. So it doesn't give a fair chance to the candidate applying to a fresh new company in a fresh new role. So I wouldn't include it in the CV itself. And I think it's you need to get permission to ask for references and all of that. So I think keeping it off the CV would be the best bet. And then later on in the process, you can share your references. A lot of companies will require it, and then they can get those factual details about where you've worked in the past.
And we have another question about personal statement. So we have somebody that asked that they usually don't include a personal statement in their CV. What is the added value of doing so?
Yeah, so like someone else mentioned, a lot of recruiters may not read your cover letter. So that personal statement gives a snapshot into who you are as a person. So I can definitely infer it from your past experience, but I think that, using the key descriptors of who you are will give me insight into what kind of person you are, what kind of person if you think you're fit for the role and if I think you're fit for the role. So I think it's nice to include. Again, it's not mandatory and every recruiter has different preferences, like Amanda mentioned, but
Mhm.
I think it's a great, I think the benefit is that it gives me a little bit more insight into who you are as a person.
Okay, great. And we had one question, somebody that just begun university and they don't have any work experience, which is exactly what we're talking about today. And they'd like to know if their high school volunteer work is relevant to put on a CV, which we touched on that a little bit, but if there's anything you'd like to add to the question?
Yeah, 100% relevant. If you don't have previous work experience and you've just started university, high school is definitely relevant. I think the later you get in your career, you can start dropping off some of the stuff that might have happened in the past, unless you've continued to do it, which is great. You can,
Mhm.
longevity is great in a CV as well. So yeah, in this case, I would definitely include it. And you can even, talk about it in your interview. And, if it was a big part of your life back then, it's definitely relevant.
Okay, great. And I think we'll take the last, probably what almost last question, since we are running out of time. But we have a question here that somebody that is currently looking for an events placement in their course in Ireland, but they don't know if a company is taking internships, particularly in that area. And the question is, should they email and ask, or does that look bad? So I think it's a question of proactivity. Even though you don't see an opportunity available, what would be your advice, or what's your take on this proactive outreach?
So I can't speak for other companies, but with us, we post all vacancies on the careers website. However, I wouldn't say it makes you look bad. So if you want to go for it, right? If you don't ask, you don't get in some circumstances. So I think it's completely fine to email. Just keep in mind that they might not be able to get back to you, or it might be a no. Um, I think it's okay and it won't make you look bad. But usually, companies will use their talent system to track applications and track roles as well, especially for a global company. So it probably would be posted, but I can't speak on their behalf. So I would say give it a go.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, last question. And so this
Sure.
is about in your experience of having, been through, you've seen a lot of CVs. So what is one thing that you've seen on your CV, on a CV that you've received that made you think, wow, this CV is really unique and the candidate really, really stood out? Just from, this is more like anecdotal, I guess. Do you have a story to share that you were like, wow?
Ooh, that is a good one. I'm trying to think. Oh, it's a good question.
She had to, you have to, I mean, take your time to.
I can't think of one particular thing because I think in the grand scheme of things, a CV is 100% important, but I think the interview is a little bit more important. So I've had a lot of great interviews where I was like, that person was amazing. That story that they told was amazing. I love them. I want them in the company. I have a lot of experiences in person, but I think it's important as a recruiter to keep in mind that that CV is just the cover of the book, and making too many judgments based on the CV isn't that helpful in the recruitment process. But I'm trying to think. There must have been something.
Or it sounds to me like you're waiting to receive it, and the person
Yeah,
that could be sending it is in this group that we're here today. So, guys, Marina is ready to be impressed, and you have
send
all
me
of
the
the right tools
CV.
now to make that perfect CV and just sweep her off her feet. So,
Please do.
definitely let's take these takeaways and have a look at the Dorchester Collection page on Hosco.
I
As
look
I
forward to
mentioned,
receiving him.
absolutely, absolutely. So before we wrap things up, we just have one more question for you. So we're going to launch here another poll, which is we would love to know what you would like to work out. What would you like to flex your muscles about for the next Pull-Ups by Hosco session? So please let us know what you think on the poll that's coming up now. I'm curious to know, and I'm very excited to work out on the next one. So as I mentioned, we are going to be doing these sessions quite often, so definitely stay tuned. We are going to be taking you through the entire journey of the process of finding your job. So we did CVs today, and we're going to be focusing on another area next. Marina, if you could let us know what came up as the poll results for what our attendees today, what these amazing students and young professionals would like to work out with next session.
I can't see them yet. I
Oh,
don't
they're
know.
probably coming up.
Okay, perfect.
They're probably coming up now so that we can know what you're most excited about for the next session.
Okay, so I'll go in order of the most answered. So 41% of attendees said general interview prep.
Ooh.
30% of people said answering the 10 most difficult questions a recruiter might have.
Ooh.
And then next was 15% searching for a job, 11% hiring manager interview prep, and then 4% said cover letters.
Okay, so it sounds like interviews and questions are at the top of everybody's mind. Well, thank you guys so much for answering that. We will definitely take that feedback into consideration as we plan our next session. And stay tuned for more news and updates from Hosco. Create your profile by scanning this QR code if you don't have one yet. And Marina, thank you so much for being this guest coach today. You've been amazing. Your feedback has been super valuable. And I look forward to hitting the gym with you again sometime soon, so we can
Thanks so
continue
much for
to
having me.
help students. Sounds great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.